The Eurasian continent is the largest landmass on Earth. The continental climate has formed the world's largest grasslands here, which is known as the Eurasian steppe. Around the 5th century AD, shortly after the Xiongnu disappeared, another powerful nomadic tribe appeared on the historical stage, the Turks. From nomads on the Central Asian steppe to an empire and cultural network spanning Europe and Asia, the Turks not only created a history more influential than that of the Xiongnu, but were also one of the key creators of Islamic civilization. Today's episode is all about this second generation of great nomadic rulers of the Eurasian steppe, the Turks. The Turks originated from the Altai mountains, sharing the Altaic language family with Mongols and Tungus people. They lived by pastoralism, hunting, and iron casting. According to Chinese historical records, in the early 6th century, the Turks resided in Mongolia and served as blacksmiths for the Rouran Empire established by the Mongolians, making weapons and tools for them. The term Turk in Chinese comes from the Mongolian language, meaning strong or robust. Early Turks originated from the Altai Mountains, the Mongolian Plateau, and the upper reaches of the Yenisei River, which is a hub for human exchanges between Asia and Europe. Archaeological and genetic studies show that they possess characteristics of both Mongoloid and European races, making them an Eurasian mixed blood race. In Tang Dynasty historical books like History of Northern Zhou, Sui History, and Old Book of Tang, the Turks are described as having broad eyes, deep, set noses, and high cheekbones. This suggests that early Turks likely had a distinct appearance different from East Asians, with features resembling both Mongoloid and European races. However, their lifestyle was similar to that of the Xiongnu. They wore long hair, carried weapons on the left side, followed water sources and grasslands for grazing and hunting, respected age and strength, lacked shame and morality, and were considered barbaric. Byzantine historical records mention that the Turks initially practiced shamanism, but later adopted Zoroastrianism from Persia, worshipping fire and light as well as air and water. The Turks also had a custom of burying their nobles with 7 concubines or slaves upon death, indicating they were still barbaric like the Xiongnu in their early stages. The Turks truly entered history around 520 AD when the Rouran Empire weakened due to internal strife. A rebellion by another tribe under the Rourans led to a split between the Turks and the Rourans. When Turk leader Tuesday, men requested that the Rouran Khan Anagui marry him off with a princess. He was refused, leading Tuesday, men to ally with Northern Wei, a Chinese state, and marry Princess Changal. In 552 AD, Tuesday, men defeated Anagui's forces near Zhangjiakou in Hebei, establishing the Turkic Khaganate as the new dominant power on the Mongolian plateau. However, shortly after his victory, Tuesday, men died, leading to a split between East and West Turks under his sons Mugan and Tumen. While Mugan inherited the title of Khan over Mongolia East Turks, Tumen received lesser titles, but still nominally recognized Mugan's authority as Khan. This political stability allowed for external expansion. The Western Turkic Yabgu Tumen first allied with Persia to defeat and divide the Hephthalites, then turned against Persia by allying with Byzantium. Meanwhile, Eastern Turkic Khagan Mugan expanded southward, defeating the Khitan people, descendants of the Shenbei in 560 AD. In 575 AD, Tumen died, succeeded by his son Datu, who continued warring against Persia and expanding into Bactria. By the late 6th century, the Turkic Empire had become a superpower spanning from Korea to the Caspian Sea, controlling the Silk Road trade and rivaling the newly established Sui dynasty in China. However, like other steppe empires, the Turks soon fell into endless internal strife after reaching their peak. In 582 to 584 AD, Datu Yabgu declared independence from Eastern Turkic Khan Boku Khan, leading to further division and weakening of both factions. As China was reunifying under Sui rule, the Turks were divided and weakened by external attacks, Khitan, and internal strife. However, when this opportunity arose for Datu to unify the Turks again, the Sui dynasty played a dirty game, supporting Eastern Turkic Shahabul Khan against Western Turks while bribing Western tribes to rebel against Datu. So yeah, That is how things went down with the early Turks and their rise and fall on the Eurasian steppe. This way, in the year 603 AD, the Western Turks were defeated by a joint internal and external attack and retreated to Qinghai with Yu troops at the head, disappearing from sight thereafter. The Eastern Turks then became a vassal of the Sui dynasty until 616, when they took advantage of the chaos within the Sui dynasty to turn the tables on it, contributing to its downfall. However, as the Tang dynasty was established, the good days for the Eastern Turks finally came to an end. In 624 AD, Li Shimin, who was still a crown prince at that time, personally led troops and defeated the Eastern Turk army in Yuzhou, Beijing, in one fell swoop, forcing the Khagan of the Eastern Turks to seek peace and withdraw to Mongolia. By 630 AD, Emperor Taizong of Tang sent out an army again and launched a fierce attack on the Eastern Turks north of Shaanxi, finally defeating them completely and capturing their Khagan. Thus, the Eastern Turks were thoroughly annihilated, with all remaining forces becoming auxiliary troops for the Tang dynasty. Unexpectedly, when the Eastern Turks were being wiped out by the Tang dynasty, the remnants of the Western Turks under Dao Dao's grandson Shui Khan reorganized and controlled the area from Altai Mountain to Lehigh and Xingdu Kush Mountains. After Shui Khan's brother Tuyu Khagan ascended to power, he further expanded his territory, regaining control over Tokaristan, Bactria, and the Tarim Basin, making the Western Turks a dominant force in Central Asia once again. In early 630 AD, when Xuanzang went westward for Buddhist scriptures, Chuyue Khagan warmly received him. However, dramatically, several months later, the Gijoluru tribe suddenly rebelled and killed Tuyu Khagan, splitting the Western Turks into two factions, Nushibi and Julur tribes. Over the next 20 years, these two tribes exhausted their strength in unclear wars, becoming vassals of the Tang dynasty. Thus, the First Turkic Empire came to an end. However, as you can see from the progress bar, the story of the Turks is far from over at this point. Starting from 655 AD, the Nushibi and Diluo tribes of the Western Turks rebelled against the Tang dynasty again, regaining their independence. Meanwhile, the Eastern Turks, which had been destroyed by the Tang dynasty under the leadership of Gojulu Khagan, a descendant of the royal family, were re-established. In 682 AD, Gojulu Khagan led troops to attack northern Shanxi and formally began resisting the rule of the Tang dynasty. From the earliest written monument left by the Turks during this period, the Orkhon inscriptions, it can be seen that the Turks had awakened a sense of national consciousness at this time. The inscription reads, "All those who have served the Tang Emperor say, 'Where is our country? Where is our Khagan?' They speak thusly, so we abandoned them and rebelled against the Tang." Therefore, from the perspective of the Turks, the re-establishment of the Eastern Turks was actually a national independence movement. However, from the Chinese perspective, this was considered an act of splitting the nation. The unified Chinese Empire has always treated other ethnic groups as follows: "If you don't accept my rule, then die." Thus, the Tang Empire formulated policies to exterminate the Turks completely, saying there is no peace without killing all the Turks and cutting off their roots. This way, a war between the Eastern Turks and the Tang dynasty officially broke out. In 691 AD, Gojulu Khagan died, and his brother Moshuo Khagan ascended to power. Back in the day, the Su dynasty weakened the Turks by inciting internal strife among them. Now Moshuo Khagan used this strategy against Wu Zetian's usurpation of power, raising a banner to defend dynasty while simultaneously seizing territory and causing chaos within the Tang Empire, quickly sweeping through Wei Prefecture, Ding Prefecture, Zhao Prefecture, Dai Prefecture, and others. In 699 AD, Moshuo Khagan forced both factions of the Western Turks to submit to him by force, thus making the Turks a formidable entity once again from east of the Tang border to west of Central Asia, known as the Second Turkic Empire. However, for a country to exist long-term, it must establish a mature system, otherwise, relying solely on one strong leader will only result in fleeting success. As Moshuo Khagan aged and weakened, various tribes under his rule began to rebel. Ultimately, in 716 AD, the great warlord Meshuo Kagan was killed by rebels in Boryu Valley, with his head sent to Chung, and with Meshuo Kagan's death, the Turkic royal family fell into internal strife, gradually losing their strength over the next 30 years. In 741 AD, when Dali Kagan was assassinated by his subordinate Zusha, the Turkic royal family fled en masse, marking the end of the Second Turkic Empire. With the fall of the Second Turkic Empire, Central Asia no longer belonged solely to the Turks, but entered an era of coexistence among multiple ethnic groups. Among them, tribes that had once been part of the Western Turks inherited the traditions of the Turks and became loyal vassals of the Tang dynasty, ruling Mongolia for nearly a century, from 744 to 840 AD. Another tribe from the Western Turks, Shatuo, joined the chaos after the fall of the Tang dynasty during the Five Dynasties period, establishing several local regimes. Other Turkic tribes continuously migrated westward and established small states in Central Asia, such as the Khaganate Empire and Ghaznavid Empire, though none could match the glory of the original Turkic Empire. However, these smaller Turkic states were quite resilient, especially the Karakanid Empire founded by Gigi Peliteli Wara, which lasted nearly 4 centuries and was the first Turkic dynasty to adopt Islam. Indeed, at this time, the Arab Empire had risen powerfully, leading many migrating Turkic tribes to convert to Islam and serve in the Arab military. If you listen carefully to the previous story, you'll realize that the Turks were undoubtedly formidable warriors. Their defeat by the Tang dynasty was purely due to political backwardness. In essence, the Turks weren't defeated by the Tang, they were defeated by their own internal strife. Thus, migrating Turkic tribes quickly entered the political core of the Middle East with their powerful military prowess. This way, the indestructible Turks once again established an empire that would challenge the Byzantine Empire, the Seljuk Empire that turned into a sieve. The founder of the Seljuk Empire was from the Oghuz Turks. Actually, Seljuk is the name of a tribal leader. But later it became the family and empire's name. This Turkic tribe originally lived in the grasslands between the Aral Sea and Sirdarya. However, during the late 10th century to early 11th century, due to internal conflicts within the tribes, they started migrating southwestward. They were hired as cavalry mercenaries by local Muslim regimes like the Samanid dynasty and Karakhanids, gradually converting to Islam. When the Samanid dynasty fell, the Turkic people of the Karakhanids and Ghaznavids fought over its legacy. The Seljuk Turks took advantage of this chaos and set up camp around Bukhara, forming an independent force. Actually, Tural Beg, grandson of Seljuk, was truly the founder of the Seljuk Empire. In 1037 he led his troops to defeat the Ghaznavid dynasty for the first time, capturing Nishapur, marking the rise of the Seljuks. In 1040, in the famous Battle of Dandunk, Tukrul once again defeated the Ghaznavids and controlled all of Khwarezm. In 1055, he reclaimed Baghdad from the Persian Buyid dynasty on behalf of the Abbasid Caliphate. The Abbasid Caliph Qaim I was naturally very moved and bestowed upon Tural the title of Great Seljuk Sultan. Those who have watched my episode on the history of the Arab Empire should know that a caliph is a title for a leader with both political and religious authority, equivalent to an emperor plus pope. A sultan means emperor. So when Qaim I bestowed upon Tural the title of sultan, it was like saying I won't be the emperor anymore. I'll just be the pope, you take over as emperor. It is kind of like how the pope crowned Charlemagne as Roman emperor. In this way, secular power in the Abbasid dynasty was taken over by the Seljuks, while the caliph became a spiritual leader without real political authority, with the sultan ruling the country in reality. Thus, the Seljuk Turks became rulers of the largest empire in the Islamic world. This is the Great Seljuk Empire. Subsequently, under Tural's successors Alparslan and Malik Shah I, the Seljuk Empire reached its peak. Alparslan, who reigned from 1063 to 1072, defeated the Byzantine Empire in the Battle of Manzikert in 1071, opening up Anatolia for a large influx of Turkic tribes. Then Malik Shah I, who ruled from 1072 to 1092, further conquered Syria, Palestine, and Iraq, making the empire span from China's border to the Mediterranean Sea. becoming a bridge connecting Eastern and Western trade. At this point, the Turks were no longer just warlike barbarians of the 6th to 8th centuries, but had integrated Turkic military traditions with Persian administrative culture and Arab Islamic faith, transforming into an exemplary multi-ethnic empire and stepping into advanced civilization. However, good times didn't last long. After Malik Shah I was assassinated in 1092. His sons immediately fought over the throne, causing central authority to instantly crumble. Coupled with attacks from European crusaders, the empire had already become a mere shadow of its former self by the 12th century. Finally, around 1220, the supervillain Mongols arrived and completely destroyed what was left of the Seljuk forces, bringing an end to the empire. But this wasn't the end for the Turks. Those who have watched my episode on Ottoman Empire history know that after the disintegration of the Seljuk Empire, it split into 10 small Turkic principalities. One of these principalities' leaders was named Osman. With extraordinary leadership skills, Osman quickly turned his scattered Turkic followers into a tightly organized and fierce fighting force. Then the Turks established an empire once again, which lasted for 600 years, outlasting the Mongols and conquering Byzantium, creating brilliant civilization until after World War I, when it transformed into today's Republic of Turkey. Today, they still play a significant role on the international diplomatic stage as one of the few truly secular states in the Islamic world. To this day, there are 6 independent countries with Turkic peoples as their main ethnic group and Turkish language as their official language: Turkey, Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan. Although these people, especially Turkic genes have been greatly diluted by other ethnicities, I believe no one would deny that the Turks are undoubtedly one of the most successful ethnic groups in human history. They came from the steppes, but their status in world history has long transcended that of steppe or nomadic conquerors, profoundly shaping the political landscape of Eurasia and becoming a major creator of Islamic civilization. Truly, they were like a flame when united stars scattered across the sky when apart.